Okay, welcome in, yogis, yoginis. Welcome back. All right. So make sure you have your notes ready and handy. As I had mentioned, we will be jumping right into the Dinacharya and the Rtucharya in order to go into more depth on the routines and the daily and seasonal regimen. So get your stuff out and ready. We're going to give it just another minute or two as a couple people are popping into the waiting room. Yeah, and then in the meantime, thank you. Those that are remembering to sign in, super appreciated. Nicole, I'm not sure. Alyssa, it seems like Alyssa's having a little bit of trouble. Wait, Alyssa, are you here now? Okay, Alyssa's here now. It was, she was stalled in the waiting room for some reason. Okay, great. Okay, namaste, everyone. I hope you all had a good and restful break, particularly you pittas out there. I hope you had some time to actually have a break. Welcome back. This is our last full session already. I can't believe time flies by. And we're going to hop right into that Dinacharya and Rtucharya that we touched on before the break. So let me get a screen share up and going here. All right, that showing up for everyone? Yeah, okay, great. All right, so this is pretty much all the information that I gave you before break. And the inquiry was, or the request was to kind of just compare it, knowing what you now know about the gunas and the elements and everything we've studied up to this point for self-inquiry and self-awareness and how to find balance. How did your daily routine and your daily structure compare to this kind of Ayurvedic remedy or Ayurvedic clock, the Dinacharya? So just to repeat, each dosha rules 2 different parts of the day. They go in a cycle and then they begin to repeat. So 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. is Vata time, as well 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. We're in Vata time now, so it's a little bit of a struggle for me. Kapha time is 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then it repeats from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Pitta time, it's going to be right that Pitta chunk in the middle of the day, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and as well during the middle of the night, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So we're going to take a look at what Ayurveda says or suggests as far as routines and structure and what is going to help you create the most balance and the healthiest routine for your day and for your life. So in the Vata time, specifically the morning Vata time, this is what is called the Brahma Muhurta. Sorry, trouble with my words. Brahma Muhurta. And this is like the time of Brahma. This is said to be like the most divine time. The time, you know, this is ruled by Vata. It's air and ether. So it's when veils are kind of going to be most thin. This is the best time for your morning routine or morning ritual. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Your spiritual practices. So this is a great time to do like mantra, your meditation practices, to have silent time as you're getting up in the morning to set your intention for the day. So, very unlikely that most folks are really, excited to be waking up at 2 a.m., but there's a range here, right? And so the recommendation is to arise normally, like an hour or two before the sun rises. So that can be challenging for folks closer to the equator. So those of us here in Puerto Viejo, in Costa Rica, or in areas closer to the equator, we're having a pretty, almost broad daylight prior to 6 a.m. So I mentioned this the other day. So for us to get up before the sun, we would really, to be in the Brahma Muhurta, we'd really need to be up like at 4 or like 3:30. So it's going to change a little bit. Also, that's why I said location and the external factors will impact it as well. For some of you that are from further north, as you get into the fall season and make your way deeper into the winter, getting up before sunrise might mean that you wake up at like 7, right? Because it's still not going to be like full daylight. Or if you're like way far north, as some of you are, even later, when you're getting into days that are like more dark than light. So morning routine, time to set your intention for the day, time to do all of your spiritual practices, your meditation. So this Vata time has the most kind of prescriptions according to Ayurveda. So typical recommendations are things like immediately eliminate. So most of us, the body tells you to do that when you first arise. Drink water, ideally hot or warm water. One of my teachers said it this way, and I felt like this. I have participated in this practice for quite some time already. However, I felt like it really, if I was on the fence about it, this would have really driven it home for me. She's like, think about your digestive system as like the engine of a car, and you just really want it to be like really clean and pristine. Before you start going and putting the fuel in it, you want to make sure it's like clean, it's new, it's running well. So you wouldn't go and like clean out tubes with coffee, right? Or like a smoothie. So drink some water, or water with limon a little bit first thing in the morning. And it's really gonna make a big difference for a lot of folks as far as like setting the tone for everything being just well lubricated and running right the way that it should go. So early rising, drinking water, evacuation of wastes. The next request is a cleansing of the senses. So this is things like tongue scraping is another great one. You can see in the morning what's called ama, or waste, like a white layer on the tongue scraping. Splash the eyes and face with water or rose water. Having time in silence is a cleanse for the ears. The drinking of the water is like a cleanse for the palate. Tongue scraping, rose water. And then again, not all of it. I know sometimes when you start looking at Dinacharya and Rtucharya, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to get up like at 2 a.m. in order to do all these practices, or I'm not going to feel balanced. You can pick and choose what works for your life. And also, once you're accustomed to doing it, it's pretty quick. I don't do every single one of these, but every morning I get up, I run first to use the restroom, I scrape my tongue, I splash my face with water, I spray rose water, I brush my teeth, and then I drink hot water. And honestly, it takes me like 2 minutes. I don't have to set my alarm an hour early to do it. It's just like so in my system now that it's natural. So if it seems intimidating, you will with time get accustomed to it. And then the last one is neti or nasya. Neti, some of you may have heard of. A lot of folks call it neti. It's a long E, neti. It was a tough one for me to learn after calling it neti for, about 10 years, which is the cleaning of the sinuses. So that is one way that you can clean the sense organ of the nose. Now, neti is not right for everybody. Are you all familiar with what that one is? Have you heard of that? Yeah, it's like the washing with the either slightly warm water or like a saline solution. You have to make sure it's purified water. You don't want to be messing around. Like if you're traveling around the world and you don't know if the water's clean, like do not attempt your neti pot. But you essentially pour the neti pot in one nostril and let it cleanse out. So any guesses, you can throw it up in the chat. Any guesses who the neti might be really good for? Let's see. Kapha. Kapha. Yeah. Vata, we have a different one for Vata because neti can be drying. It's going to be a saline solution. It's really going to clear everything out. So kapha that's accustomed to maybe being a little more mucusy, a little more like, sticky and gunky, particularly in the sinuses, the neti pot's going to flush all of that out, and it can have the effect of being a little drying, which for kapha is good. Vata might want to use nasya. Nasya is an oil. I use this. I don't often use this when I'm at home here in Costa Rica, but when I go to the north, either visiting my family or studying, I do not go without my nasya oil because I get so dry, I will actually get nosebleeds. And so like nosebleeds, particularly if you have a predominantly Vata constitution, would be a common one. Or certainly if you experience nosebleeds, then you probably have a Vata imbalance. So you can actually get nasya oils that are specific herbal blends. And you could even find, I'm sure, nasya oils that have different herbal blends depending on your dosha. But in general, for example, before I have a little mix now that's specifically nasya oil. So it has like a little bit of a medicinal smell. But prior to that, I used plain sesame oil. That's because I know that sesame oil is good for my constitution. I make sure to use a really good, an oil that I could probably ingest. It's organic, it's good, high quality. You don't want to be going and putting like perfumey or chemically oils on those sensitive membranes on the insides of your nose. So if you tend to get a dry nose, especially in fall and winter season, probably a lot of you would be more likely to need the nasya as a cleanse for your nose and sinuses versus the neti. If you feel mucusy, if in cold season, the way that manifests in you is mucusy and phlegmy, then you might be better to check out the neti. I'm just seeing seeing lots of stuff popping up in the chat. So let me. Okay, so yeah, so for tongue scraping, yeah, there is actually a tool for that. It's called a tongue scraper. If you want to go like way into it, you can start to look at like what type of material might be best for your dosha. But honestly, it's, just get one that's going to be safe and non-toxic to scrape your tongue. And you don't have to like, scrape your taste buds off. It's like, it's gentle. It's just like choo choo choo. I do like 1, 2, 3. I do that like 3 times across the length of my tongue and then done. You shouldn't hurt yourself. You shouldn't be scraping skin off. It's really just to get that slimy layer that's there in the morning. What kind of oil is it exactly? I'm not sure if you're asking about the oil that I use. I actually have it here because we're doing Abhyanga. But what I use is Banyan Botanicals, and I use sesame. But that's also because, again, that's what's going to be good for my dosha. But you could really use any kind of oil. Yeah. Okay, Nicole, thank you. She's got her tongue scraper handy. She's showing, yeah. Ooh, yours has like cool, comfy handles on it. Wow, look at that. Yeah. And so for the oil, basically anything as long as it's not like chemical, perfumed, or anything spicy. Like, so kappas could do well with like a mustard oil. That's probably not something you would want to put on your membranes in your nostril. Recommend to reduce neti during Vata? Yes, great question. I love your questions because it's making me go like, yes, it's landing. Like it's, it's setting in for everyone. Yes, absolutely. You would probably want to reduce neti during Vata season. So if you're kapha or you've had a kapha imbalance and you've been using neti, you probably won't need it during Vata season, but you might. It's going to just depend on what you have going on for balances and imbalances. But when your nose is like dry and raw and there's like a lot of wind and you're like cracking, you're just not going to neti's not going to feel good probably for you. So yeah, good. Great. For pitta to cleanse their sinuses. Yeah, so pitta can also use pitta can use either. It's kind of nice because pitta is like sort of in the middle. So it's like you got to listen to your gunas and figure out which way you're going, because remember, neti is going to be clearing and pitta does have water and they have that oiliness, the slightly oiliness. So if they're a little bit congested or stuffy, they're going to want neti. If they're having a little bit too much air blowing on their fire, they're going to dry out a little bit, so they can use nasya. So they can probably use either. Yeah. Yes. So Matt is... Yeah. You know what I think? Matt, I like your thought process, and we're going to actually move forward with the calendar because I think that that's going to become more clear for you as we go through. Yeah. Because it can be confusing. Like when you see pitta in the middle of the night, particularly that one tends to be kind of confusing for people. All right, good. I like where all of your heads are at. Great. So that's the cleaning of the senses. Oil. Oh, another good one for the ears, other than silent time, is oil on the ears, particularly for Vata. So Vata, their organ is the ears. They're going to be prone to being sensitive to noise, things like ear infections. So warming up the ears, a little massage on the ears, or oil can be really good as well. And abhyanga, which is oil massage. This is the part, like for me in my routine, I just don't have time to do abhyanga every morning. One of my teachers does abhyanga like 3 times a day. Like when I heard her say that, I was like, how? I want to do that. I want to give myself massage 3 times a day. It's just not practical for my schedule. So when I do incorporate abhyanga, when I'm feeling a little bit vata agitated, I actually incorporate it at night to settle in. So you will have an experience of abhyanga this afternoon, but certainly if you do have the liberty of like making your own schedule and really like stretching out how you start your day, then abhyanga is really good for the sense organ of the skin. So you can add that in and make sure you do the massage, you leave it to set for like 10 or 20 minutes, and then you want to rinse the oil off, especially kapha. You don't want to leave like an oil slick on your skin, especially if you have a tendency to already be unctuous. And then we'll go over specifics of how to do that abhyanga for each dosha this afternoon, this evening. Okay, that's like kind of the lengthiest one. There's a lot of stuff that is recommended to do in this in the Brahma Muhurta. Just getting my light on there. Okay, so that brings us to I'm going to actually skip forward. I did the Vata times, pair, the Kapha, the Pitta, but we're going to actually go around the clock. So that brings us into Kapha time, the morning Kapha time, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. So now your sense organs have had a chance to wake up. This is the time you want to move. So those of you that participate in any sort of movement practices, and it doesn't have to be, you know, anything too rigorous, that is going to depend entirely on which gunas you're working with, what your elemental balance, your doshic balance. So it could be that you go for a walk at this time. But this is when you want, this is the best time for yoga practice in the sense of asana, like your physical practice. Do your meditation, your pranayama, your spiritual stuff in the morning, and then do your physical practice sometime between 6 and 10. This is a good time to have breakfast. Remember, kapha is going to have that tendency toward the gunas of heavy and dull. So I'm not really sure where this came from, or if it's from like the, you know, the food pyramid at some time, like that the ideas on nutrition are constantly changing. But I know I always had it drilled into me growing up, like breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That is not what Ayurveda suggests, actually. So breakfast, because it's in the kapha time of day, you already might have a tendency to feel more of those kapha-like qualities. So in order to counter those and have lightness and alertness and an uplifting start to your day, you may try a lighter breakfast. For example, vata, I share most about vata as well because that's my life experience. You know, Ayurveda suggests another thing that's very simple, which is you eat when you're hungry. You know, it's like one of these crazy things, like, again, like, why do we need to be taught that? Now there's many reasons why the appetite can get weird and funky, right? But in general, if you have a strong agni, a strong digestive fire, your body will tell you when you need to eat. And so pitta folks might be told that they need to eat like 6 times a day. That's fine. That's absolutely fine because their digestion can handle it. Kapha folks, their digestion might tell them that they only need to eat once a day. So long as they're not trying to like do that intentionally or they're suppressing their appetite, that is also fine. Like kapha people are going to be more predisposed to being able to do things like a fast or a cleanse because they're not going to have like the raging fiery appetite of a pitta. A kapha person is, you know, going to forget to eat. They're going to forget to eat, or they're going to be like, oh, I'm so proud of myself. Yay, I ate 3 meals today. It's a miracle. You know, or they might plow through the day and arrive to 5 o'clock and be like, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten anything all day. So they're going to need to look more for structure and make sure that they're having structure. So this is the good time because of these qualities that, as I said, can also be really positive for kapha, that steadiness and the focus. This is the best time if you have to do really focused work and studying. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is going to just lend itself to giving you that focus. You're going to be able to keep your butt in your chair and get it done during the kapha time. Is there anything else? Yep, that was about it on that. So then we're going to go to the midday pitta time, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is when the sun is at its most powerful. So the agni is burning, the fire is burning at its most powerful. You've gotten up, you've done your practices, you've cleansed your organs, you've gotten your digestion working for the day, you've had your movement, your digestion's robust. This, according to Ayurveda, should be the time frame in which you have your strongest meal, your largest meal, because it also gives you enough time throughout the rest of the day to digest, absorb, assimilate, and process it before you're then laying down and sleeping. Because you don't want sleeping is not, you don't want to put your fire out. So if you eat like a whole, and I know that probably, I know I certainly have, probably some of you have also experienced this, Thanksgiving, if any of you are from areas in the world that have a holiday or something similar where there's like just so much food and like heavy food, like a lot of potatoes and squash, like roots and, you know, like sometimes a lot of dairy things, or for people eating meat, like a lot of meats. And then it like takes you days to recover. You go into like food coma state. And you can be really, really sleepy for days, and your digestion can feel really slow and sleepy because it's like it's too much and it puts the fire out. So, you know, think about the way that fire works as an element in nature. When you want to really get the fire going, you throw little bits of kindling and dry leaves and dry grass. You don't go to a fire and throw a huge log onto the fire. The fire smushes and goes out. So you want to eat when you're hungry, give your body fuel to keep the fire going without dropping a huge log on the digestive fire and like choking it out. So the pitta time, this is when the cook is in the kitchen. This is what I'm talking about here is like internally. Your cook is in the kitchen, you know, all your organs are functioning at their peak performance of the day. They're ready to go. The intestines are like, let me at it, give me all that stuff. I got plenty of time to assimilate this and digest it. Let's go. Okay. If possible, after meals, or particularly after your heaviest meal of the day, take time for 15 minutes rest on your left side, because that's going to be what best supports your digestion. And also because that's good for pitta. Remember, pitta needs to slow down and learn to rest. So there's something to be said for honoring the siesta. And actually, if you look at, I know like a lot of folks further north in North America or in Europe maybe like, what's that? You know, slowing down, time off after lunch. But there are lots of cultures globally that really honor and have that practice of siesta, or like, it's like, no, this is a break time. Like I know for me, when I first moved here, it was mind boggling to me that during lunchtime, things actually closed. I was like, what do you mean the post office is closed right now? I got stuff I got to do. What do you mean the bank is closed down? Because it's like, because this is not time for working. This is time for rest. I'm digesting my food, I'm eating, and I'm not doing anything else. So if you can, eat something and then take a little bit of a rest on your left side. That's going to really help your digestion. All right, so I think this is going to answer one of the questions we had earlier. We're going to go back to Vata. So now in the clock, we go back to the Vata time in the afternoon. So this is when you're going to get your snack attack. You're going to get hungry. You're going to want chocolate. You're going to want another cup of coffee or another cup of tea. You're going to maybe not be able to focus so much on that heady intellectual work that you were able to focus on in the morning in the kapha time. So this is when you want to schedule your time for community or group work or Zoom meetings or your lunch date. Well, maybe not lunch date, because maybe don't try to eat your lunch at this time, but you know, your social meetups or gatherings. This is going to be the time that your creativity is at its peak. So if you're having trouble focusing and getting the heavy work done, this is a good time to let yourself have that space to daydream, because you might actually find that some really great progress and ideas come out of this time, because Vata wheels are turning. That's one of their great gifts, is their creativity and their artistry. If you feel super unsettled or out of balance or out of whack, you can do any of those things that settle the Vata gunas, right? You can take a few yin postures or a few restorative postures. Nadi Shodhana is amazing. That one's really good for all the doshas, but really for Vata, like just balancing out the nadis, the left and the right, coming back to equilibrium, to upeka. All right. Then we're going into Kapha evening time. This is when the day starts winding down. Throughout most of the year in most climates, the sun is going to set between these hours. I know there's exceptions on like wide ends of the globe. It's recommended to have a lighter or lightish dinner. Unless, for example, like in my household, because we have a little one, we eat dinner pretty early. Like it's probably usually like 6 or 6:30. So unless you're eating like on the earlier end of that, and then you really are someone who stays up until 10 o'clock, then you could probably do like a little bit heavier if you need to, if you truly have the appetite for it. But I also, I'd be interested to hear your feedback if anyone starts to work with this calendar, because I know something I've noticed is that now that I make a concerted effort to have my biggest, heaviest meal during the pitta time, by the time dinner comes around, I'm not hungry for a huge meal. I'm not like, oh my gosh, I'm starving because I didn't eat all day. So I'm okay with having like a salad or some fruit or something like that, because I feel like I still feel pretty satiated from my big, huge meal that I have in the middle of the day. Start to get into relaxing and light activities. This is a really important one that I had mentioned, I think yesterday or the day before. Be in bed, if at all possible, by the end of kapha time. Because otherwise, as we rotate again into the pitta time, if you're not already sleeping, or if you're not already like close to that and getting prepared for it, that's when your second wind is going to come. It's going to come during the pitta time of the evening. And then that's a real bummer. It happens to me sometimes. And then it's like, it's not just like, oops, I went to bed at 10:30. Then at least for me, it's like, whoops, I went to bed at 1:30, even though I was really tired at 7 o'clock at night. But then I just like, it went too far and then I couldn't go to sleep. So I'm sure you all already know this, but the blue light stuff, oh, that reminds me to put my glasses back on. The blue light stuff, like if possible, try to be away from your devices for at least an hour before you go to try and go to sleep, because all of the light and the screen time, it's like, it's really rajasic. And then especially if you're in addition, like watching something rajasic. So it's going to be super hard for your mind to settle down when your organs have been like having an onslaught of this light right up until the time that you go to bed. So try to take some space from the blue light before you go to sleep. Okay. And then last but not least is the pitta time in the middle of the night. So this is when the liver is at its most active. It's ready to cleanse. This is the time your body needs to regenerate from the day behind you. You need this time from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. to sleep deeply. And so it is a fiery time because it's pitta time, but it's a different type of pitta. So I love this imagery. This is from my teacher. I did not, coin this. At the lunchtime during pitta, the cook is in the kitchen. In the evening pitta time, the janitor is cleaning the halls. So that is when your body needs to be able to be in a state of sleep and rest so that your natural systems can do what they need to do to cleanse. Because if you're up and you're wide awake and you're binge watching Netflix and you're agitating your nervous system by, watching stressful, violent stuff, the janitor is like not able to do its job as well as it needs to. Plus you need, of course, it's other conversation we don't even need to have. Like your body needs sleep. We don't function well at our optimal health when we don't have sleep. So this is going to be the time of deep sleep. I see tons of stuff coming up in the chat, which is really exciting. I am going to keep moving forward and go right into the Rtucharya, which is the seasonal routines. And then we'll kind of do some questions before we move on to the next thing. Okay. So yeah, definitely note questions on the daily routines in the chat, or write them down and we'll go through some stuff with that. Okay, Rtucharya, the seasonal regimen. I actually do believe, I wanted to clarify something I said yesterday that was wrong, which is that all of the transitions, or they're called the Ritu Sandhis, are all Vata. That's not actually true, which I was reminded when I took my stuff out this morning. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. However, because it's changed, because it's a big change, you still do have to watch the Vata at every change of the season. So even though there are 2 seasonal changes that are ruled, one by Pitta, one by Kapha, you'll see on the chart Vata is still dominant. And also, because it's a deep change, you still got to watch Vata because it's sneaky. And it's still going to be the one that throws stuff kind of out of whack. So lots of these are pretty intuitive. We talked about some of these the other day. Summer, of course, is Pitta season. It's hot. It's light. Quite literally, we have light for longer hours. It's, there's oily. There's like the oiliness. We're sweaty, very Pitta. Fall, of course, is Vata, as well as winter. It's dry. If you live in places where you actually get to witness the seasonal change, like the leaves, the trees, actually their leaves fully dry up and they fall off. So it's very dry, it's stark, it's rough. Our skin gets rough, there's wind, it's cold. All the things that Vata does not need. And then, so of course, the transition between those 2 Vata seasons is going to be extra agitating for Vata. Spring, mucus season, that's ruled by Kapha, and then if you live in one of those lucky places that gets the 5th season of mud season, that is also Kapha season. It's murky, it's dense, it's like humid. There's like a dullness. Before things start to bloom, everything's kind of like gray. Like where I grew up in New England, it's like the ground is brown, the sky is gray, the clouds are gray and black, like there's rain. It's like, it's not very pretty until things bloom. And then it's like, and then now we're in summer. So it's kind of drab. That's Kapha. So it lends itself to that heaviness of the Kapha. And then we have the Ritu Sandhis, the cruxes between the seasons. So like I said, you're gonna have to watch that trickster Vata in all of those cruxes. But there will also be the additional spike of Pitta between spring and summer, and then Kapha between winter and spring. And so we talked about that one yesterday with like when the snow all starts to melt, or sometimes you get like a false start to spring. It's like the snow starts to melt and things get like slimy and slushy. And then, then in like April, there's a snowstorm and 3 feet or like a meter of snow falls, so that can be very discombobulating for Kapha and for Vata. Okay. So that was it about the season. So, I mean, if you look through at some of the activities, that's one last thing I want to talk about before we open for some questions. When we go into Pitta season, quite naturally, people move into activities that are much more Pitta. They're outside. That's when everyone like picks up their practice again of like running or bicycling, where we're out on the lake, where we're probably like staying up too late, we're going a little bit too hard. All these Pitta tendencies are going to come out in the summer, the longer days. We have more fire. You also probably, particularly, I'm speaking of places where you can really feel the external factors change. In summer, you're going to have way more energy. I know when I used to live in Maine, I sometimes wanted to go to bed for the night at like 5 in the winter because it had already been dark for like an hour. So that doesn't happen in the summer. You're like up and rearing to go and it's 10 o'clock at night and there's still a little bit of sun. Or if you're further north, it's still like broad daylight at 10 p.m. So, and then you go into the fall and winter season, and it's like, it's cold, it's crispy. It's, you might be drawn to, you can still be outside, which is nice. Like particularly in the fall season, I see right now, a lot of my friends are like putting pictures and stuff up, and they're like going out for hikes, and it's leaf changing. Like I think leaf changing peak just passed. And that's nice. So there's still that little bit of like push from the movement of the air element. And then winter comes and everything just dries up, and it dries up and it gets cold. And so we can start to feel very cold and cut off. Also, like emotionally and in our social lives, we're much less likely to like want to be going out and hitting the town in the winter time. We want to like wrap up in blankets and not leave our couch, right? And then, yeah, and then we get into that heaviness and the dampness of spring. So certainly those heavy rain showers and the mud and the muck can keep people, can have a tendency to like keep people in the kapha state. And then the sun starts to come out and you see blossoms blooming, and people kind of want to like get out and get into that lightness, which pitta brings us in the summer season. So I know what I love about this is that like, and I know that going over, I'm gonna stop the share now, that probably so many of you are like, well, yeah, duh. You know, it's like, it's so intuitive, because we are a part of nature. We are human beings. We are having an experience as beings of nature. And so we intuitively have a connection with the seasons and the rhythms of the climate around us, of the beings around us. So if you felt like, you know, obviously, then that's good, because that means you're connected to your environment and what's going on around you. So I'm going to scroll back through because I got a bunch of questions here. So Matt, so the question was, I wonder if a well-balanced day might involve leaning into each dosha once and then counteracting each one once. Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah, because we're going to relate to each dosha twice per day. But each time we relate to it, it's in a really different way. So I feel like the most obvious one is like pitta. During the pitta time of day, that's when like you got to eat your big meal. You got to take a little bit of rest. But you also want to like feed your fire. That's why you want that big meal at that time of day. And then in the evening, you need to sleep, because internally you're very fiery. So like you got to give the janitor time to do its job and clean. You got to give your liver and your organs time to cleanse. Those are like really two very different pitta experiences at the different pitta times a day. Equally, the first vata time of day is like when you want to have your time for silence, your daily practices and your cleanses of your organs. You want to do your meditation. That's when you're like connecting with Brahma. And then the afternoon vata time is when you can like socialize and do your community stuff and allow yourself to daydream. So vata things, but really different ways to approach it. So I guess the answer is kind of yes. I haven't really ever like thought about it that way or looked at it that way, but I think that could work. So Chloe's saying, if folks want to know more about oils, tongue scrapers, and Ayurvedic profile, et cetera. Yeah, Banyan Botanicals, they don't just sell products, although they certainly do, and they're very high quality products. But they also have a ton of educational material that's free. Like even just their blog alone is it's awesome. It's a great resource. So if you're into this stuff, for sure, check them out. I'm going to type it here now so you know how to spell it. Banyan Botanicals. Does eating a large meal at this time also applies the same in this hot weather? Yeah, seashell. Yeah, actually, part of why we want to eat that that big meal rather, is because the sun is at its brightest. So like that is when we have the most light and the most agni during the cycle of the day. So that's when your fire, both externally in the environment around you and internally, because now you've had time to wake up, you've moved, your organs are ready to go. Your fire can handle a little bit of a bigger, you still don't want to throw a huge log that's going to put out the fire, but it can handle like a good amount. And that's when you're stoking the fire. Like, here you go, let's build it. Like let's put it into like a little bonfire. So I'm going to feed it some food. So yeah, for sure. The hottest time of the day, which I know it's kind of like, the heat can do funny things to appetites. Like I know a lot of people come here and they're just like not hungry because it's so hot. But the biggest meal of the day does not mean that you're eating like hot potatoes with gravy and fried whatever in the Caribbean sun. That doesn't have to be what the biggest meal of the day means. Like biggest meal means like the most sustenance. So like maybe your really big meal is still cooling foods, I say this one because it's like one of my favorite when I'm really feeling overheated, but like cucumber, mint, and watermelon, have at it. Eat like 5 bowls of that. Throw that on there. It's fine, fill right up. And you can still balance the gunas while you're also feeding your digestion. The left side is going to support your digestion best. Yes, Rachel. Oh, thanks. Some folks here are sharing the links to blue light. I did have that in my questions. I was going to send that in a follow-up, but yeah, thank you. Okay, so 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pitta time. Would it also be good time for exercise? I tend to have the most energy during that time of day. Are there other recommended activities other than eating? So in Pitta time, can I do anything other than eating? So yes, exercise is not necessarily recommended, particularly if it's going to be vigorous, which, then it's like, well, what about the lunchtime vinyasas? Because those are everywhere now, like I want to go and get my sweat on in my like 30-minute lunch break. And I'm also going to rush my way there, rush my way back, eat my lunch in my car, do my hot, sweaty vinyasa, and then go back to work. How settled do you think those people are when they get back to work during the vata time of day in the afternoon? Right? So it's not really recommended to do vigorous practices at this time of day. And it's also like, I'm not sure why I haven't shared this with you yet, but I was thinking about the poor pittas and the ashtanga, earlier when I was like, even a pitta can do ashtanga. One of the yeah, I keep saying shloka. It's like, which is like, it's not a shloka. That's like it's like a song to help you remember something. But one of the sayings, I guess you could say, in Ayurveda is anything can be a poison or a medicine. Anything. And it's funny because when I first heard this a while back, I was in a course and the folks in my course kept being like, yeah, but what about, yeah, but what about, yeah, but what about, and it's like anything without exception can be a poison or a medicine. So for example, if you are a kapha constitution and the only time that it is possible for you to do your physical practice happens to land during the pitta time of day, do you think that it would be wise to go, well, that's pitta time of day, so I shouldn't move? For a kapha, no, like it's okay. A kapha needs to move. They need to get up. They need to break up that slowness. So it's okay. If you're very pitta and you're like, yeah, but my favorite yin class happens to be at 10 a.m. at the studio down the street. Do you think it's going to like super agitate a pitta to go to a yin class at 10 a.m.? No, probably be okay for them, right? So anything can be a medicine or a poison. There really are no absolutes in Ayurveda because it's completely different from person to person. So that's why you got to always go back to the gunas, to the elements, to your personal constitution. What is going to bring me to the greatest state of balance right now? Like if you're feeling a little unsteady and not very rooted, like go eat the ice cream. Go eat the dang ice cream. It's fine. Even in the vata time, like you feel like you need a snack and you're like, your mind is all over the place. And it's like, well, but I'm not really like supposed to snack because it's probably just the vata and I already had the heavy meal. It's like, if that is going to help you feel grounded and it's going to bring you back down to planet Earth, go eat the snack. Yeah. So there's no absolutes. It's not the best time to do physical practice, but like it depends on what the physical practice is and who the person is that's doing the physical practice also. Some blue light links. Yeah. So Lauren, hang on, let me read this whole question. Yeah. So this is a great question. She's saying, do natural circadian rhythms play into this schedule? Like how some people, especially teens, naturally want to sleep until, go to sleep at 2 a.m. and wake up at 11 a.m. And is there a dosha that tends toward early bed, early rise, and vice versa? The answer is yes. And I wish that I could actually go into this because there's also an Ayurvedic clock for life stages. Like each of our life stages is also naturally vata, pitta, or kapha. Like right now, probably most of us, I would say, yeah, we're all in pitta stage of life. We're past puberty. We're not yet toward retirement. We're in that stage of life where like we're going out and getting it in life, where building the relationships, we're working the careers. Yeah, we're doing the thing. We're meeting people. We're going out. We're building our whatever, our families. We're building. We're building our careers. We're moving around. We're traveling. When you get to a later stage of life, like my parents, closer toward retirement, that's a vata state. And what do so many people that go into retirement, what do? Or at least in the United States and Canada, where do they go? Florida. They all go to Florida or California. Like or Costa Rica. They come to Costa Rica. They go to a place that's warm. It's like their body is like, I'm tired. I don't need to deal with cold. I'm like physically tired. I'm mentally tired. I don't have the stamina I used to have. You go into a vata, you're like okay with like more silence. You don't have to do all the things. You don't have to raise kids and take care of parents and build a career and you start to slow down. And from conception until puberty is kapha. And so, everything is slow, everything is new, everything is learning. One of my dear friends, she's got a teenage daughter and I'll see her sometimes. She's like, guess what, Avani, I stayed up until 3 a.m. last night. And I'm like, oh, why would you do that? And of course I remember that, I remember doing that. And I'll be like, why would you do that? She's like, oh, I'm talking with my friends. And then she thinks it's funny. And she's like, oh, and then I woke up at noon. And I have to really remind myself, like, it's okay. She's like still kind of getting out of that kapha stage. She's sleeping a lot. She's and she's eating all the junk food, it's like, it's okay. They're in that stage of life. So yeah, totally. That does play into it as well. It's super interesting. Ayurveda impacts and touches on everything. everything, because it's elements. It's working with the elements and the qualities. So yeah, for sure. Good question. And yeah, there are going to be people that just have a natural tendency to, like a kapha is normally not going to have trouble sleeping generally. Their challenge might be the rising early. A pitta might be able to get on it because they're going to be like so hell bent on getting the daily routine perfect that they're going to like set timers for themselves and be like, okay, I need to shut the lights out now. I need to go to bed before the pitta time. You know, got to get it right. Vatas might have a tendency to be a little more erratic. They might not need as much sleep. They're lighter, like they're like wispier. They don't need that deep, heavy sleep like a kapha might need, like a pitta is going to need, because they're just exhausted because they're just on fire all the time. Yeah. So, let's see. For those of us far from the equator, are we meant to change when we wake up throughout the year to wake up with the sun? Yeah. So this is a good question. Erica's saying for those far from the equator, because here, you know, the sunrise and the sunset only changes by like, it's very little. Like I want to say it's like a half an hour to either end when the sun rises and the sun sets throughout the whole year. It's like more or less between 5:30 and 6 in the morning, it's daylight. More or less between 5:30 and 6 p.m. at night all year, it's dark. So yeah, there is a big difference when you're living in a place where in the summer it's broad daylight at 6, and in the winter it's not really like full daylight until maybe like 8 or 9. So yeah, you can definitely, that will impact it. So you want to experiment with that. Because I know that Erica, you're pretty far north and you're in a place where winter can be very impactful and you got that wind going. So experiment, you know, this is why we are our own guinea pigs. So experiment with that for sure. The good news is that in the winter time, getting up in that special time with Brahma is a lot later. So for the kaphas, it's a little bit better. It's like I don't have to get it up at 3 a.m. to kick it with Brahma. I can get up at like 7 and I'm still up before sunrise. So yeah, you can experiment with that and see what works best for you. And same, so Roxy's asking like, how does it apply to us with only 2 seasons? And yeah, it's intense, you know, because we are essentially in Pitta season like all year round. And it's very interesting because the ripple effects of this, you know, globally, when you look at places that don't have the outer effects, the environmental effects of the 4 seasons, you really do see it reflected in the environment around you and the people around you. You know, this is a Pitta place. It is hot, like especially this last, like we're kind of just on the tail end of like our summer season. It's just been like, you know, this time of year is like scorching hot. There's not even relief. You go in the ocean and it's like getting in a hot bathtub. I'm not complaining. I know all of you in wintry places right now are like, will you stop? But what I'm saying is it's like, it's hot. It's hot. So if someone already has a predisposition to be a Pitta person, living in a climate like this will be challenging just because of those external factors. Remember, that is one of the causes of imbalance in Ayurvedic medicine is the external environment. I, of course, didn't have this in my mind when I made my plan to move here. But for example, for someone who's very Vata, to be able to be in a warm climate is very helpful for me. It's very soothing. When I go to the Northeast, when it's, well, I don't even have to say when it's cold, because really like any time of year up there is like not warm enough for me. But particularly if I go in the fall or in the winter, it agitates everything. My skin, my digestion, my attitude. I get really like stressed. My stress levels go through the roof, even like for no reason, because I just get like jittery. So yeah, every single place that has different environmental things that they're working with is going to have different challenges. So here, when we have just the 2 seasons, it's either hot and kind of dry, or it's hot and it's wet. Those are the only 2 seasons we have. So we're always going to have that constant guna of hot. So those that are here or like closer to the equator, that guna of hot, ushna, it's always going to be there. So essentially you can never really go wrong with seeking out cooling activities, cooling food. Yeah, you pretty much can't go wrong with that. But then you also have your composition to take into consideration. Like I do make soups here. I shared that. But that's because I'm Vata. Sometimes here I get cold enough, I'm like in a sweater and jeans. I put socks on. It's a special treat when I get to wear jeans and socks, make soup. So yeah, it also depends on your constitution too. Good question. Yeah, so Kiana is also asking, yeah, so actually this is a great question. She's saying, so do different locations, which is kind of what we've been talking about, and climates have their own Rtucharya, like how some base off of the 6 seasons in Eastern countries with rain? Yes, absolutely. So actually in the homeland of where this system was created in South Asia, it is a 6 season system. And so they also have like monsoon season. And so, yeah, the environment, absolutely. Yes, you're all on it. You're getting it. It's absolutely, it changes. So, when you think monsoon season, who do you think would be, agitated or kind of thrown off by monsoon season? You can all just maybe type it in the. Yep. Kapha. Yeah. Yep. Totally. All that rain, the dark, the humidity, and also me and Puerto Viejo wet seasons. Yeah. I was actually thinking, we do have really intense wet seasons here too. The difference is with monsoon seasons, they also have wind. So the wind and the movement is also going to be agitating for Vata because they have the wind and they have the cold and the wet. So this is that's like a Vata's worst nightmare. So yeah, good. Let me go back. Vigorous movements. Vata time considered the very only best time for vigorous movement. Yeah. So Kate, the question is Vata time considered the very or only best time for vigorous movement? Actually, when you want to do the vigorous movement is Kapha time.
That was my correction. And is there another time other than Kapha time that you would recommend, given kind of the balance?
Yeah, this is where I feel like you are all going to start to get really irritated with me. Anything can be a medicine or a poison. So these are the recommendations according to the Ayurvedic clock and calendar. And again, as I said earlier, even a pitta can do Ashtanga as long as they are doing it mindfully, which means you could do physical practice at any time of the day, so long as you're doing it mindfully. So as an example, I happen to know, because I have the roster of everyone, and one of the things that you had to fill out to send to me was what time zone are you in? Because I wanted to get a gauge of like what time it was going to be for people. And so in the evening and afternoon practices, you probably may have noticed we did not do anything vigorous because it would be tough for Ria to try to go to sleep after doing a vigorous, kapha balancing class like we did this morning when we're finishing at like midnight where she is, right? So you can do a physical practice at any time so long as it's truly going to be balancing for your constitution. But this is the recommendation to counter the stickiness and the dullness and the slowness of kapha. Get up and get it moving. And also that gets everything moving for the course of your entire day. Best locations for certain doshas to live. So Zahir is asking, are there best locations for certain doshas to live? Some places that are absolutely bad for certain doshas, or would it be okay to always? have to be balancing to compensate. Doshic trends in ethnic groups from specific countries. Ooh, wow, that would be a super interesting study. I love all your questions so much, and I'm really trying hard to not go way out there on tangents. Yeah, I mean, we do see this trend, for example, in the far north. When people get into that Vata stage of life, there is like a mass migration toward warmer climates. So I would say that like certain doshas or certain stages, you know, whether it's Vata, Pitta, or Kapha stages of life would probably fare better if they had the option of living in an external environment that would better support their doshas. The reality is that's just not a possibility for everybody. But certainly, you know, the external factors, the environmental factors are one of the causes of imbalance. So if you are born naturally as a you know, like super duper pitta, and you happen to be born right on the equator, you will constantly have that external factor that you will have to contend with when you are seeking balance. When you are striving toward balance, you will constantly have that hot sun, those super long days. It's always going to be there. Does that make sense? So yeah, I think for sure certain constitutions would probably fare better in different geographical areas. And also, like, you know, we got to just work with what we got sometimes, because not everyone can be like, I'm going to move to a different country to better support my dosha. You know, or sometimes you do it accidentally, like I did. You know, I had no idea until I really started studying this stuff, how supportive like a really wet, humid, and hot climate is for Vata. Oh, okay, Kate, I'm just seeing your correction now. Thank you. In terms of leading others with Dinacharya in mind. So scheduling. Yeah, Ebony. So in terms of leading others with Dinacharya in mind, such as when scheduling and making space for others to. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, not everyone here is a teacher, but many of you are. So we can totally go into this. If you're able to have Dinacharya in mind when you're scheduling with folks, that will be amazing. And they might not even they don't even necessarily need to know that. Like I was saying, how I worked with time. I just recently went through and did time chunking or time blocking for my daily and weekly work. And so things like just making sure if I'm going to do anything that's like too social or too kind of out there that will spread me too thin, I make sure that's in the afternoon. I don't schedule that during the Vata time where I really need to like hunker down and get the stuff done. So you can definitely do that with your scheduling and with your clients, with your students. I know you work not just with yoga, but you also work with children too. So then you can also, if you really want to go into it, then you can really also like take into consideration where they're at in their constitution, in their growth stage. So most of the folks, or most of the little ones you're working with, well, I think, although you might have some that are like teenagers, but I think most of them are probably still in kapha stage of life as well. So yeah, definitely go for it. This is why I want you to have the information. Like, take this information and use it in a way that's going to not just benefit you, but it's going to benefit the people that you come into contact with as well, your students, your clients. Okay, good. Whew, that was like a lot of information. I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad that people are asking questions, because when there's no questions, it's like dun dun dun, like they're not into this. So, yeah. Is there any last thing that anyone would like to add or ask before we move
Tiffany
on?
has her hand up.
Oh yes, thank you. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi. So just kind of resonating with Ebony's question, can you give kind of like a case study example? Like, okay, so you've got this kind of client, at this age, with this constitution, here are some things that we might do with them at this time of the day and blah, blah, blah. Can we kind of just do that once?
Guys are making me work. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, these are fun. I actually love doing this stuff. Okay. So we're going to take Susan. I'm going to describe Susan, and then actually you all are going to help me create the case study. And you're going to tell me like what would be good for her. Susan is in her 70s. She's got a little bit of early signs of osteoporosis. She doesn't have much of an appetite, so her weight has gotten pretty low. She only sleeps about 4 hours a night. Okay, sorry, just to be clear, this is not something that is going to be within your scope of practice to do. We're only doing this for fun, okay? So, but you cannot go out and like start to diagnose people, you know, unless you're an Ayurvedic practitioner, please don't do this. So we're just doing this for fun. Okay, so my question is, say she has come to you and she wants to do a yoga class with you. Or she's just like your new friend and she's like, hey, let's go do fun stuff together. What do you think would be good for me? So first of all, what could be some pretty safe assumptions that you might make about Susan? Sorry, I forgot her name for a second. Okay. What could you assume about Susan with the information I've given you? Yep. Maybe Vata, maybe a Vata imbalance. And what I had just mentioned as well is she's definitely in the Vata stage of life for sure. So she's got signs of early osteoporosis. So she's got like her bones are going to be light and fragile. Could use oiliness. Yeah. What might be like a good activity you could go do with Susan? No one's got ideas. Poor Susan. She's just waiting to go do something fun. Oh, a couples massage. Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking. Like take her for a massage. Yeah, steam room. Swimming. Yes. Abhyanga. Yeah. Massage, steam room, swimming. So you're like, okay, great. We've got a day. I'm going to add in yoga. That's my contribution. So we've got a day planned, Susan. You just wait. We are going to do a couples massage. We are going to hit the steam room. We're going to go swimming. We're going to do some yoga, not necessarily in that order. Now, we're in the Vata time of day. Which of these things, like how are you starting your plan, your day with Susan? What are you going to do with her in the early morning Vata time of day? Lunch. Cece says, feed Susan. She's wafting away. We don't want to probably feed her yet. Yeah, meditation. Oh, or maybe you probably meant during the day is like something fun you could do with Susan. Okay. Yeah, so something meditative. Or the other thing too is you could like leave her alone and let her have that time be the quiet time. Like maybe you don't start your friend day at 6 a.m. You say, okay, Susan, I'm going to get in touch with you after you've done your morning meditation. Or like, hey, do you want to set our alarms together and we can like both get up and do meditation together in our, in our spaces. So it doesn't have to be a social experience because remember, that's going to be time for silence. And then as you get into 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., what of these activities that you're going to do together are going to be good? Spray her with rose water. Yes. Yeah, totally. So any of the more active, like swimming, Yeah, swimming, you could do your yoga. You're going to have a light breakfast, but something with sustenance, because she definitely seems like she's got some vata stuff going on. The yoga, you're going to want to make sure it's nothing that's too agitating for vata. You want to make sure it's grounding. So even though it's movement from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., maybe you could like go swimming, get a little bit of movement. That's wonderful movement for someone in their vata time of life. And then you could come and do like restorative yoga. Hot yoga, it depends. Like it could be a slow hot yoga, although I would say for someone in their vata stage of life, if she's like really low weight and having like early onset or early signs of osteoporosis, that hot yoga might be a little bit too intense for poor Susan. Yeah, painting. Although painting could be a good one for the next, So then we're going to move into the pitta. So that's when you can go and have your nice lunch date, right? Eat good, healthy, grounding food. Get your big meal. Yeah, you can do after the meal, you could do some walking, wake up the joints. You can take some rest, lay on the left side. You can get out in nature with her a little bit. And then in the afternoon, this is when you might want to do like painting, or if she happens to be a client, you have like a group project you're working on with Susan, the afternoon is going to be the time to do it. You're going to share ideas. You're going to brainstorm. That's going to be the time that you're working with that stuff. Swimming, steam, and sitting. So Erica's asking, is swimming and steam and sitting, I lost the comment. I think what you were asking was, is it ultimately drying? And that's going to depend on the dosha. So is it salt water or is it fresh water? Is it a steam room or steam shower, or is it a sauna? A sauna is going to be more dry than a steam shower where someone's going to be sweaty. Salt water is going to be more drying than fresh water. But certainly if someone's purely air and ether, it doesn't matter what kind of water it is, just get them in the water. They need wet because they are just dry. So it doesn't matter what type of wet, just get them wet. Get them in the ocean, get them in the river, get them in the steam shower, get them sweating. Yeah, and then in the evening, in the kapha time, you can start, you start to slow it down for the day. So does that making sense? I know we kind of like breezed through in the last part, but it's because I do have a couple other things I want to get to with you before I have to say goodbye. But does that make sense? Yeah, case studies with the doshas are wicked fun. I'm going to see if I can find a link to like a good website that gives some examples of these. Case studies are really fun to do too with the chakras. It's like exaggerations of the attributes. But yeah, and then with, you can do the same thing with clients. Like for you, Tiffany, I know wow, you've got a wacky clock that you're working with, because I know you're teaching folks that are like in a way different time zone than you. So then you always have to seek out balance. So it's like, are you going to do something that's like really active and uplifting and fiery, because that might be the pitta time of day for your student, when for you at your home, it's 4 o'clock in the morning or something. So you're still in the vata time of day. And so then it's like, whose balance do I actually want to address? So then it gets really tricky. Layers upon layers. The learning never stops. So, all right. Awesome.